Hey, it's Amy Newmark. I'm off this week for a writing retreat because I have to work on my book, Chicken Soup for the Soul, Maverick with a Mission. It's coming out in October, and I have to write it. I hope you enjoy this week's episodes. What we're doing is rerunning the very first week of the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast. Chances are you haven't heard these episodes before, and I think you'll enjoy them.
Changing your life one story at a time. This is the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast with Editor-in-Chief Amy Newmark.
Hey, it's Amy Newmark, and I'm here with your daily dose of Chicken Soup for the Soul inspiration. I've been sharing inspirational stories with you, sometimes to entertain you, and sometimes to entertain you and also give you a new perspective or an easy-to-implement tip to improve your life. But there's another thing we do at Chicken Soup for the Soul with our stories. We try to do everything I just said. We entertain you, we enlighten you, we enable you to have a better life. But we also try to make a difference. We like to say that we are changing the world one story at a time. And I know that everyone says they're a socially conscious company, but we really are. And the key is these stories. The people who write these stories give us the key to changing the world one story at a time, because these stories are about extraordinary experiences. And that's why these stories wow you and help you think differently about things. And so we use the stories to accomplish our own missions to make the world a better place. And one of the most important missions that I accomplish with our books is to help the millions of cats and dogs in the U.S. and Canada that are abandoned. They're living in shelters, or they're outside on the streets or in the woods, but they're waiting for new homes. We put out a new pair of cat and dog books every year and a half or so, and our newest pair came out on February 9th. Now, the royalties from this pair of books and from our previous pair of dog and cat books go to the American Humane Association. We love the AHA, and we want to help support them in their work saving animal lives. And it's part of a larger effort that we have at Chicken Soup for the Soul to work with shelters around the country. We've actually donated tons of our Chicken Soup for the Soul cat food and dog food to shelters. So how do we use our books to promote cat and dog adoption? As editor-in-chief, I have the ability to do this by featuring stories about adopted dogs and cats. And by featuring those stories, people who read them start to think, oh, I should go adopt a dog or cat. So the next time they think about getting a dog or a cat, they automatically go to their local shelter. Now, the other thing I do is I try to feature the categories of dogs and cats that are often left behind in those shelters. And those would be black cats and dogs, senior cats and dogs, and also pit bulls and pit bull mixes. I have to say, I was so moved and really heartbroken after I visited some shelters in California a year and a half ago. And one of the shelters I visited, and luckily only one out of all the shelters, was not a no-kill shelter. But at this shelter, I saw one large black dog after another. Remember, that's a very unpopular category for adoption. I saw these dogs being led away on their leashes, and the dogs were prancing because they thought, wow, I'm out of my cage. I'm being taken for a walk. This is so great. But I knew where they were being led. They were being led to this really awful place. And it just affected me so much. And I know personally, if I get a dog, it will definitely be from my local shelter. So my producer, Alan, is squirming in his chair because he's a dog lover and he doesn't want to hear anything more negative about what happens to dogs. So I'm going to tell you a happy story now about a dog that was rescued from a dumpster where it had been thrown away. And it's from one of those new books I mentioned that supports the American Humane Association. The book is Chicken Soup for the Soul, My Very Good, Very Bad Dog. The story I'm going to talk about is called Service with a Smile by Catherine Bales. Catherine tells us that her neighbor arrived at her door one day clutching a 10-day-old pit bull puppy that she had found on the verge of death in a dumpster. And I guess she brought it to Catherine because Catherine was known to have always had pit bulls, even though Catherine had promised her husband that she wouldn't get any more pit bulls after their last one died. But what do you do when your neighbor presents you with a frozen, almost dead puppy that's so small it's the size of a can of soda? Of course you save it. And when Catherine's husband came home, he jumped right in and helped with the puppy that night. Catherine was wheelchair bound, and so she needed a new service dog anyway because her old one had just retired. So she decided she was going to train this little pit bull puppy. And that little dog turned out to be the best service dog. And that little dog learned how to pull her wheelchair, how to retrieve items that Catherine couldn't reach. After Catherine was in a major car accident, the dog pulled Catherine out of the car and then sat on the gurney as she was being wheeled into the emergency room. So Catherine got a perfect service dog from a dumpster dog for free. And she saved a life. And she says, that tiny dying puppy that my neighbor fished out of a dumpster seemed to realize that she had a mission to complete and intended to live to fulfill it. And fulfill it she did. So you can see why we're so committed to helping save all those abandoned dogs and cats. And I'll share other stories about shelter dogs and cats with you in the coming weeks. In my own family, we have 2 wonderful dogs that were rescued from shelters, including our mascot at Chicken Soup for the Soul, Riley the pug, who is a very defective little pug who was born with one side of her face mushed in. She's got missing teeth. She's got one tiny blind eye and then one big brown pug eye. She's deaf on one side. Her tongue hangs out all the time where the teeth are missing. And this little pug was found wandering the streets in Rhode Island, having recently delivered a litter of puppies. Maybe she was at a puppy mill, who knows? And she's the best behaved dog I've ever seen. Thank you for listening today. I'm Amy Newmark. If you'd like to read more fascinating stories from the book I mentioned today, Chicken Soup for the Soul, My Very Good, Very Bad Dog, go to our website. It's chickensoup.com. Next time, I have a special treat for you. The brilliant, gorgeous, activist supermodel Emmy will be joining me. She's going to talk about curvy women. Curvy, confident, and fabulous. And the whole curvy movement that's been in the news recently on the next Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast.